The Sabbath, a divine invitation to rest, reflect, and reconnect with our Creator. But in a world that rarely stops, one question lingers. Does the Bible allow any form of work on the Sabbath? And what about charitable acts, especially life-saving work like medicine? Today, we're diving deep into a sensitive but important question for Sabbath keepers. Should we work on the Sabbath? And if we do, does it matter if we're being paid or not? Let's start by defining our terms. Work in the Bible is often referred to as Melakah, a Hebrew word used in the Fourth Commandment. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work. In fact, the Bible permits no one to work on the Sabbath. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. Exodus 20:9-10. Melakah refers to occupational labor, what you do to earn a living, to produce, to build, to create value, especially for yourself. But what about service? Jesus shows us a different model. His model of good works on the Sabbath was not for monetary gain, but a divine service, good works. Jesus healed the sick, cast out demons, and even defended his disciples picking grain on the Sabbath. But here's the catch, he wasn't paid for it. It is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Matthew 12:12. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Mark 2:27. Jesus redefined what is permissible on the Sabbath, not to allow secular work, but to show that acts of mercy, healing, and restoration are not just allowed, they're encouraged. And crucially, Jesus did not charge for his services. His example was pure service, not compensated labor. Sabbath-keeping communities, like Seventh-day Adventists and Orthodox Jews, have wrestled with this issue. In Judaism, pikuach nefesh, the principle that saving a life overrides Sabbath laws, justifies doctors and nurses working on Shabbat. Even in rabbinic law, this is based on, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Hosea 6:6, Jesus promoted service to others on the Sabbath that we have now turned into work. For Adventists and other Sabbath keepers, medical professionals often work Sabbath shifts because healing is a service of compassion, especially when lives are at stake. But there's often a personal struggle about getting paid on the Sabbath. So, what makes something work? Is it the task or the payment? Here's a simple breakdown. Work, task done for wages, profit or gain. Service, task done for benefit of others, unpaid. Reimbursement transforms a service into work. Even if it's a good deed, if you're being compensated, it becomes part of your occupational labor. So, should Sabbath keepers be reimbursed for working on the Sabbath? Let's go back to Jesus. He healed, he served, he loved, but never once do we read that he was paid for doing so on the Sabbath. Or any other day. Freely you have received, freely give. Matthew 10:8. The Bible doesn't leave room for ambiguity. Sabbath is holy, set apart, reserved. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath, and call the Sabbath a delight, then you will find your joy in the Lord. Isaiah 58:13-14. Occupational labor, even if noble, should be paused as a sign of trust in God's provision, but serving out of love, without charge, is part of the true spirit of the Sabbath. So the answer? Sabbath keepers should not do paid work on the Sabbath, but they can serve others in acts of mercy and healing without seeking compensation. Consider this, if you weren't being compensated, would you still work on the Sabbath? Your answer to this question will let you know if you are serving or working. Some Sabbath keepers argue, I may work on the Sabbath, but I donate the money I earn to help others, so it's not really work, it's service. This sounds generous, and it can be commendable, but it still doesn't reflect Jesus' model. Freely you have received, freely give. Matthew 10:8. Here's the key distinction. Service is about the spirit of giving, not just the financial outcome. You can't sanctify disobedience by donating the proceeds. While donating Sabbath earnings is a kind gesture, it does not change the nature of the activity. The Bible doesn't say do paid work and give the money away. It says do no work. Exodus 20:10. If you keep your foot from breaking the Sabbath, Isaiah 58:13. The Sabbath is more than a rule, it's a rhythm of divine rest. In that rest, we reflect the character of Jesus. He showed us that love is never against the law, but profit can corrupt the purpose. If you're a doctor, nurse, caregiver, or someone who's torn between duty and conviction, ask yourself, am I serving out of compassion or clocking in for a check? On the Sabbath, may we put down our tools, shut down our screens, and open our hearts, rest, worship, serve, just like Jesus did. Takeaway: Sabbath work equals compensated occupational activity, not permitted, versus Sabbath service equals selfless, compassionate, unpaid action, encouraged. Using Sabbath wages for good doesn't reverse the act of working. Sabbath, rest, worship, serve, just like Jesus. Not even the animals are permitted to work. Exodus 20:10. Thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger, that is within thy gates. Isaiah 58:13-14. If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord, honorable, and shalt honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words, then shalt thou delight thyself in the Lord. Exodus 20:8-11. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor, and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. What does it take to obey the Sabbath command for those in the medical field? Faith and trust in God that He will provide, that if you desire to serve Him, He will make a way for you to rest on the Sabbath. Seek first the kingdom is to obey God in everything first, and He will do the rest. We cannot excuse the word of God away, not even in good works. It cannot be justified. To obey is better than sacrifice. God seeks total obedience. Finally, remember that the commandments are not individual, but a package. Break one, break all. James 2:10 says, For whosoever shall keep the whole law, and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. If you found this message meaningful, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's wrestling with this issue. Let's keep the conversation going. Drop a comment below. Have you ever wrestled with this issue? How do you live out the Sabbath commandment?